All right, so now we have our cartoon character. We have the lines, we have everything on its own layer, we have all the color dropped in place, and now there's a couple finishing touches I want to mention to you. Now, this is personal preference. You don't have to do this. This is something that I really think about. When I look at a hand-drawn illustration, there's an element of line quality. And what I mean by line quality is thick to thin, where you can see the pressure or the direction of the pen have changed. And that's something that you don't really get in digital art. And that's something that I've always felt makes digital art feel very impersonal. I think a lot of people feel that way, even if they don't necessarily realize that they're seeing that. So there's a couple things we need to do when we clean this image up, and one of them will help fix that. Once you're done with an illustration like this, the next step is to zoom in super, super close. I'm just going to move, minimize these guys for a minute. And when you zoom in, you're just going to make sure that things line up, right? So you're going to go through and say, okay, well, that line's pretty close to where it's supposed to be. But if I go to my direct selection tool, and this is another one where black does not work on this particular case. I'm going to double click. And I'm going to change that black to some other color. Let's go with a color that stands out a little bit better. Yellow. Okay. So I'm going to grab this and just kind of reposition it just so that that looks a little cleaner, right? Little things like that. Like if I scroll down and I look at the mouth, well, that corner should be sort of there. And most of these I was pretty tight about, and I can kind of clean up little areas like this as I go as well. Now, that's fine, and if you get that far, that's great. This is for people that want to take this just a little bit further, make this feel a little bit more real, somebody who really wants to go for that illustration or art vibe. And that is a tool called our width tool. This is the symbol for it, and I wish I could explain to you what I think that symbol's supposed to look like. I don't really know, but if you hold Shift and hit W, you can get to the width tool. And what the width tool is, for a quick demonstration, is if I have a line. Typically, what I've had in the past in Illustrator was the ability to just change out the thickness of my line. Well, with the width tool, what I can do is grab parts of the line. So I can grab this end and make it thick, and that end and make it thin. Not only that, but I can grab different points and I can taper in different shapes however I'd like to make things look. Right? So you can get much, much more interesting looks. I could take this a bit further. If I click my width tool and I hold down Option, I can make it asymmetric. So a line that doesn't have to be symmetrical. Okay? So I'm going to do that as a finishing touch to my illustration. Not everything on here, I think, should be just dead-ended kind of. Here's what I mean by that. For example, this. This is supposed to show that the ear tapers out. Right? If I were to look at the original, it's kind of hard to see that that big because it's blurry, but it kind of fades into a point. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it. I'm going to hit my width tool, Shift W. I'm going to go to the end of it, and I'm just going to drag it into a point. That's all, just that. And that, to me, looks so much more organic and natural than these squared off points. So I'm going to do this on most of my lines, most of my detail lines. I'm going to go through and I'm going to change the thicknesses of. So it might end up just being something like here and making it a little thicker, or here and going thin at the beginning, thick, thin at the end, and try not to go, it's very easy to go overboard with this. But these guys, I tend to just like to kind of put points on at least one side of those terminating lines. And to me, that just looks much more organic, right? Same thing on here. I might come in, make the middle just a tiny bit wider. But then the ends taper out a little so that they don't come to squares. And this is where it's very helpful to work close. All right, so again, here, make that the thickness there, but on the ends, and they don't have to be the same thickness, just something a little different. This smile line, I feel like, should be a little thicker here. I'm actually going to make it asymmetrical. Just pull it up a little bit so it's got a nice crease in it. And then those lines kind of fade out. Let's see. Looks a little more dimple-like. I might have gone a little overboard, like I said. But not too bad. All right, so you can just kind of go in here and have fun with this to an extent. Make the lines a little more varied. Probably most noticeable, in the areas like his sort of chin hair. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. So I would say this, even to just stylize these circles, you do things like this, where you make one side thin and one side thick. And it kind of changes out the look of these. Just makes them a little different from each other, right? Kind of gives it some more flavor. And then here, same idea. Shift W. These are hairs. They should come to a pretty minuscule point. Otherwise, they're not going to look like hairs. Make that a little thicker. Make that a little thicker. Round out those edges. Right. So this is just a way for you guys to finish up the design or the look overall. Same idea here. And to me, that just makes it look just that much more kind of hand-drawn, a little more organic, a little more warm and inviting. All right? So once you have that, my last challenge for this particular batch is that you guys now go in and you add the collar. So that's the piece you're missing, right? So think about, what would that collar look like? How would you do that collar? How would you make it sit right? What layers? Things like that. Is the collar and the tag on one layer? Is it on two layers? That's up to you. But I want to see how well you guys can do that collar. And then once you're done with that and you think you have a pretty solid version, again, remember to save. We're just going to delete the background when we're all done. So you can just drag this file, this layer right here, down to the trash, and that'll get rid of that original. Now we'll just have this left. You can add a background to it. You have the color on. And when you're feeling confident with that, the next step is to go find your own cartoon character from online and attempt to draw that. So go online, look for a cartoon character of similar art style. Nothing too complicated. I wouldn't do anything 3D rendered. Nothing three-dimensional, nothing like a Pixar character. But something kind of older style animation, something more flat animation. And see if you can do the same thing. Mentally break it apart. Think about the biggest objects in the back. Try to stack it out in your head and figure out what pieces go into building a character like this. So at the end, I want to see what you guys came up with. Not only do I want to see your Scooby with his background and his collar, but I want to see what new characters you can come up with and, have fun with it. Find something that you're, nostalgic for from childhood, something like that, and see what you guys can do. All right? So submit those, and I'm curious to see what you come up with.